Maximize Profits, Plug Profit Leaks, Part 2, brought to you by CFO On Demand of Fitzpatrick, Bongiovanni, and Kelly CPAs. Please support our sponsors. This month's sponsor is Sturdy Savings Bank. My name is Lou Bongiovanni, and I'll be your presenter. I head up the CFO On Demand division of our firm, and thanks for joining us. We gave part one of this presentation about a year ago, received a lot of feedback and a number of follow-up questions, so that prompted us to bring a part two, a little deeper dive into some of the things we had talked about, maybe some more examples of it. So that was the impetus of having this month's presentation. So the three things we're going to be covering in this webinar, number one is signs that you have profit leaks. We'll look at some minor and major indicators that there may be some profit leaks. Once you determine that there are profit leaks, we'll then discuss ways to measure them and what the potential of improvement is. And then lastly, we'll indicate 7 ways to fix profit leaks for good. Okay, just as a little recap of our first part is we focused on the causes of profit leaks, and we broke it up into 4 categories. One being people, the fact that people are unpredictable and inconsistent, that could cause profit leaks. Processes could be poorly or well documented. They could change as technology changes. Those variables can cause profit leaks. Strategy, what the owner or owner's goals are for the company or that product or service or initiative, can vary at times, and those changes can result in the profit leaks. And lastly, the culture, the overall ownership and feel for the company, changes in that, and again, that could be very dynamic, can result in profit leaks. So there are the 4 areas we drilled down into in part 1. I'm not going to do that again in this segment, but I just wanted to link this segment with part 1 in saying they were the 4 areas. There'll still be an overall theme, but we'll focus more on indicators and possibly ways of measuring the potential. Okay. When we talk of profit leaks and signs of profit leaks, as I alluded to, they're minor profit leaks, which all companies have, and no company is perfect with it. So minor profit leaks are very commonplace. Where there becomes a problem is when those minor ones escalate into major profit leaks. So minor ones are easy to fix. They come and go depending on changes in the economy, changes in staff, changes in what you're offering. Major ones tend to not happen that often, and when they're in place, they tend to be fixable, but they take more time. They're more ingrained and a little harder to fix as far as changing things in the company. So let's go over some examples of minor signs of minor leaks. One is you have inconsistent decisions being made. So, for example, if you're a retailer and you have a somewhat loose policy on returns, and someone comes to the counter and you have one person there and they extend maybe a looser exchange policy for a particular person, and now let's say that same person comes back months later, but now a different person's at the counter, and they extend maybe a tighter one or a looser one, whatever the case may be. Now you have inconsistency because you've given discretion to employees there, and depending on what the goal is or what the directive is by the owner, one of them is being more generous than you intended. Well, there's a profit leak potential. And again, if you're talking retailer and a lot of transactions, that number can be minor or it can escalate into a major number. Second, not done the same way each time. So let's shift more to production. Let's pick a restaurant. Okay, you have chefs or cooks there, and let's say a cook absent a set recipe that is followed consistently. If you have a cook making a certain dish one way and another cook making it slightly different, and let's say the portions are different and the costs relating to them are different, yet the price is the same for both, again, there's a potential for a profit leak there for sure. And no goals or objectives being defined. And again, that is where the directive comes from the department head or the owner, indicating our goal. I'll just take that dish, for example. Let's say it's a hamburger with fries on the side and a drink. The goal is to have X% profit on that. We want, 45, we want a 40% food costs there on something like a burger, so we want to make 60% profit. If there's no set goals, really the two cooks in my example have no way of measuring whether or not they are consistent with the financial goals of the company. The customer might be happy, but the ownership will have potential leaks there, and as it relates to that dish. All right, other minor profit leak signs, not paying attention, only looking at today. So this is middle management who is responsible not only for today's task, but to look a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead, maybe a month ahead, not looking ahead at potential obstacles that there might be, and that might be avoiding costs. So if a piece of equipment is breaking down or showing signs of it, not being proactive in fixing it, or maybe it gets to a point where it's a disrepair and you have to replace it. Those kind of look-ahead things are examples of potential profit leaks escalating. Not knowing market or competition. One thing that is important, especially in providing a product, is that you don't necessarily have to be the best in the state or the world. You want to be best in your market. So understanding your market and what their pricing is and what they're giving for that product or service is especially important as far as making sure that pricing is right and profit leaks are minimized. Inadequate performance metrics. We are very big here at CFO OnDemand as far as metrics, automating things. We're using things such as Power BI and artificial intelligence. These are all things that are now available for small and medium-sized companies. The more you can plug into that and really fine-tune what you're looking at, the better. For example, I'll just stay on the restaurant theme. If you're finding a particular dish within your entrees has all of a sudden lost popularity, why is that? Why are other dishes going up? Did we change some pricing there that maybe fixed the profit leak, but really it reduced the popularity of the product? Those kind of things can be monitored much better using business intelligence or BI as the term is becoming more popular. Now let's talk about some major signs of profit leaks. These are ones that can cripple a company if not looked at, or completely close a company. So these are leaks that sometimes are hard for owners to accept because they're ingrained in the company, but real important to make sure that you're aware of and you address, or at least constantly try to improve on. No accountability. When you're dealing with small companies, owners might have family members. There might be preferential treatment for certain family members or longtime employees, where the issue of accountability starts getting a little gray or falls by the wayside. That's where you have a potential for profit leaks, because you take a retailer, right? If it's the owner's child or spouse or whatever the case may be, they might not be working up to the standard. Many times I find they're working beyond it, but let's say they're not working up to standard yet. Now there's a double standard between them and, let's say, an unrelated employee who's asked much more for their task. Those kind of things of non-accountability or perceived favoritism will affect profit leaks one way or another. Either they won't sell as much, or there might be some waste cost in labor, or frankly in the actual production of the product, if it's a product. no expectations for new lines of business. Change is inevitable. With technology, certain industries are changing much quicker than others. Being able to stay on top of that change and making sure that that doesn't impact your profitability is real important. There's plenty of examples where you would charge for a product or service, and now the industry has said, you know what, we'll give it away. Cell phones is a good example. In the past, it would be you pretty much got a cell phone for free, and then they would get you on the monthly rates there, cable as well, where you get modems and things of that nature. That dynamics has changed where now they're charging for it up front more, and then it's more competitive in the monthly amount. So we see it all over us in different size companies in different contexts. Chances are very good it also impacts your company and your industry, and it's wise to be on top of that in order to price things better, therefore minimizing any profit leaks. Employees in the wrong positions, I kind of alluded to my earlier comment there. If you're not putting the right employee given their skill set in the right position, you're not getting the most out of them, and therefore you're not being as profitable. If you have someone who is not of a good personality and you put them there as a hostess or a waitress, chances are pretty good you're not being able to get as much out of those transactions as if you put the right person in there. And you know that because when the right person is in there, those numbers start popping, and you know there's a reason for that. Okay, some other major signs of profit leaks: constantly lowering costs, no change here, chasing pennies, stepping over dollars. So what that is a lot of times when there's adversity in a company, the main thought is let's circle the wagons, let's lower costs, let's drive costs down as a way of getting into a mindset of almost survival mode there. That does work, but it usually works in a short period of time. And usually you do that so that you can regroup and move forward. If that's your constant go-to strategy, that leaves a lot of profit left on the table because you've now shrunk your ability to make profits. If you shrink costs and don't expand your offerings, which is hard to do both simultaneously, you're going to have some problems with that. So if there's a blip in the economy and you're selling some high-end jacuzzis or something like that, something that's seen as a luxury, lowering the price or giving more features for a lower cost is good for a period of time. But maybe you want to make up some more money in the financing because you charge a little bit more in the financing. So you want to make sure you're thinking of all angles of it. Working harder with no results, that's another indicator. If you're finding that you personally are working harder and you're not seeing the results, chances are you're not working or focusing on the right things. That's kind of a general overall sign, and it could be one thing, but many times it's a combination of things there, and it's nice to have an outsider. We work in that role quite a bit because we're not so immersed in the day-to-day operations that we can step back and maybe bring some items to the attention of the owners to think about that maybe they've taken for granted because they've been doing it so long. A love-hate relationship with risk is another major sign. The risks are inevitable to take as you're trying changes and looking to improve the company. The problem becomes when they're not calculated risks, when you're saying, okay, I'm going to open up this new location and I'm going to invest X amount, $50,000 in this new location, and I'm going to give it 9 months, 12 months to give me this kind of return on my investment. And if I don't, I'm going to revisit it, let's say at the 6-month juncture. If I can't get it where it needs to be by 12 months, I'm going to pull the plug on it. Well, that's a calculated risk where you're just not unlimitedly saying, well, geez, I put 50 in it, I want to just keep on going and hopefully I'll turn around. I mean, that's kind of the mentality that casinos love, frankly, because anyone who goes in and says, hey, I lost this amount of money, but I want to go and try to make it back, that is why casinos look so big and beautiful, because many people do that and fail in that. So don't take that mentality to a new venture or a new location or a new line of business. that is, you're letting your emotions get ahead of you. Other major signs: slow moving, too many projects. That really is, you need to look at different either product lines or service lines and see how they are moving. Sometimes businesses who have multiple lines don't pull them apart and then really identify what the source of the problem is. If you liken that to a patient going into a doctor and they say they don't feel well, doctor usually goes over different things that it can be and tries to narrow down what the problem is. It's not like, okay, I'm sick overall. Well, it's you're overall feeling sick or underperforming it as it relates to business, but you really need to get down to the details of it and really focus on that. Slow moving or too much inventory. Inventory management is a huge, it definitely falls into major, for most companies, problem as far as profit leaks. You can't spend enough time or focus on managing inventory properly. That's why an inventory manager is worth their weight in gold if they do things well, especially with big retailers or we deal with distributors. Managing inventory can really be a big problem and a big profit leak. Outdated processes, old technology. A lot of people get so focused on, hey, it's not broke, I don't need to fix it type mentality, and they don't really devote the time into how do I improve the process. So this is kind of being a penny wise and an ounce wise and a pound foolish. There with that, you need to understand that there's going to need to be new investments. Even though the piece of equipment or process works, it doesn't mean it's optimal. And in this day and age, things change so quickly, you can't go back to the model even that our parents used, which was you built something to last, you stuck with it until it died, and then you went to the next thing that happened to be there. Technology wasn't moving at the pace it is now, not even close. So it didn't really matter. That strategy worked then. It doesn't work now. Things aren't built to last for the most part, for that very reason, because things change so quickly. Okay, so now we've talked about minor signs of profit leaks. We talked about major signs of profit leaks. I've given you examples of it. Now we know we have profit leaks. Like I said, every company does. How do you measure how bad of a leak it is, and how do you therefore fix it? So let's talk about the measuring part here. So how do you measure it? Well, there's internal indicators and there's external indicators. The internal indicators are basically looking at that particular product or service and saying, over X number of years, you look back, you back test and say, okay, over this window of time, we really made a very good profit on this. But over this window, we did not. So now you have an internal benchmarks to say, okay, is it possible that we can get back to where we were getting more profitability? What were we doing right then or wrong versus when we weren't making the profits, and learning from those situations. And you can measure it easily by saying, for example, if you're getting a gross profit percentage of 60% on something, and now it's deteriorated to 50%, so you've lost 10% in my simple example, question then becomes, 50 is attainable because I showed myself and I showed the world that I could do it. What do I need to do now in order to get back to that? Or if you say, 50 is not attainable anymore because you frankly go to the second one, you see external markets that profit margins are leaking. Okay, well then there's a new benchmark. Maybe it's 55. Maybe it's 55, not 60 is attainable anymore. If you're doing 50 now and you want to get back to 60, maybe 55 is the new standard. Whatever the case may be, that's where you can use your internal history, because there might be some uniquenesses to your location or your offerings, whatever, you can do that. Obviously, external benchmarks are excellent as well, and I would use the two together. When we do benchmarking, we benchmark it against the company and, hey, what was your best year or best period or whatever the case may be, and can that be replicated? And externally, what was the external benchmark during your best years, and what are they now? So if you beat the external benchmark there by 1 or 2%, logic would have it that you probably can beat it by 1 or 2% now. So if the external benchmark's changed, you have now a new internal benchmark. As it relates to employees, that is one of the biggest profit leaks. That's one of the ones in the beginning I talked about there. You really need to look hard at that because really, as much as many people believe their capital investment is their most valuable asset, the truth of the matter is it's most likely your employees. All right, so because that's such a major line item in most businesses, if it's a service business, clearly it's the biggest line item. If you're selling a product or service, it might still be the biggest line item. If not, it's a close second. Either way, that is a number that really needs to be managed very well. So if you have excessive turnover, you want to take into consideration the cost to replace. You want to take into consideration minimum wage increases, for example, or rising payroll amongst your competition. You want to take into consideration where you're looking for this and the level of experience of the person. All those things have to come into play as far as getting paying the right amount for the employee and moving forward. And sometimes, and I know this might sound counterintuitive, sometimes it makes sense to pay more for a given employee because your return on that employee will be higher. So when you have two people who you think are vying for the same position, you might want to pay for the higher one because overall that person will make you more profit. And you learn that from example more than anything. Okay, so now we talked about what minor and major leaks are. We talked about how to find them and measure them. Now let's talk about how to fix them. And again, some of this will be an overlap of part one because it was so good I wanted to emphasize it again, and there might be some new ones here as well. So establish employee review process. This really just piggybacks on the last slide, which is talking about the value of the employee and the profitability of the employee. So many owners fall into the trap as that employee costs me more than that employee, so that the one who costs me less is more profitable to me. That's not always the case, and I'm going to venture to say that's many times not the case. And that's because you have to look at what that employee drives as far as revenue or efficiencies or brings to the table. And the old adage is you get what you pay for usually is very prevalent when it comes to these types of employees. Next, implement business intelligence. As I alluded to before, we are very proactive with not only looking at financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, what's up, what's down, drilling into the actual data, and then extracting from that really useful information, kind of artificial intelligence, or again, as the term is, business intelligence, really zeroing in on metrics to measure profitability of products or services or employees or locations, things of that nature. You can really do a great job with it. And the more that information's out there and everyone agrees on the metric, the greater chance you're going to solve profit leaks. This single thing alone is a great starting point. I don't know how you can do it without this step, frankly. Be a watchdog, and that's more of a cultural change. When we talked about culture being an indicator, it's just having a culture where you need to pay attention and take notice of the little things there. There's Lassie and Timmy. Unfortunately, I know both of them by name here. And this is kind of, Lassie was a watchdog, but she also did things there. She didn't just kind of bark and then stay there. She was active. So you need to be a watchdog, but actually a proactive watchdog. Okay. Establish a clear process. Again, once you're measuring things more clearly, the processes should be streamlined as best they can so that as you lose people, they come and go, processes that you could plug them in better because you're documenting processes. This by far is for me, is the dullest part of the thing. It's one of those necessary evils that really help a company, but I, for one, don't get real excited about jumping out of bed and saying, oh, I'm going to document a process here. I'm going to fine-tune a process. There are people out there who do that, which God love them. That's great. You do need them in the business. I'm not one of them, but I can measure that as best we can. All right. Next is be a committed owner. Have a plan. Really, this is saying you're an owner, lead as an owner. Lead, delegate, don't micromanage. Give the employees hire good employees, give them what they need, and then measure their effectiveness based on something that's a clear parameter. It sounds so simple. Frankly, it can be simple. Now, it takes time to get there, but it can be simple. It's once you get there, that's really a special company that you have, no matter what you're doing. Embrace change. I've kind of alluded to this already, that really change defines growth, and growth allows you to take advantage of opportunities in this changing market and taking a calculated risk. So that is more of an owner mentality and culture. If the owner doesn't have it, the company doesn't have it. So if I'm speaking to you and you're an owner and you're kind of comfortable and not really open to much change at all, this is probably just an okay presentation for you. This part won't speak to you, and that will inhibit how much you can grow. It doesn't mean you can't be comfortable and move forward, but really all you're giving yourself is a job at that point, to be honest. And last, work smarter, not harder. Again, this is more of an entrepreneurial's mantra as far as trying to improve your company. You want to find ways to improve the process, get feedback, look at things in a very detailed situation with the help of your staff, but then be able to pull back and look at them from 10,000 feet away. So in a brief recap, 7 ways to fix profit leaks for good is establish employee review process. Again, get the most out of your employees and see how profitable they are, not how expensive they are, but how profitable they are to you. Implement business intelligence. You get number 1 by really improving number 2 in the metrics, and that's just not looking at your plain balance sheet income statement. That is just scratching the surface. Be a watchdog mentality. Have people take pride in the fact that they're saving the company money or making them money, and obviously some profit sharing incentives to help motivate people to do that is awesome. Establish a clear process so there's benchmarks. People know when they're doing a good job and not, so that they know that they're moving in the right direction. I think most people go to work with the hope and the intention of doing a good job, but maybe don't have a clear indication of what that is. Be a committed owner. Be involved. Roll up your sleeves. Get involved in the process, especially when setting up some of these things, so that you really have a pulse on it. The more you pull away for either personal or family things or whatever the case may be, get distracted, there tends to be a drop-off. If you don't care that much about clogging profit leaks, you really can't expect your employees to care that much. You want to embrace change. Change usually brings in growth, always brings in growth. Sometimes it takes a longer window of time, but it's hard to grow without changing. And then you want to work smarter and not harder, and that's just stepping back and working as efficiently as you can, and that too will contribute to profit leaks. So all these 7 steps, in one way or another, either help drive revenue or help control costs. The ultimate result is helping to improve profit, and that's what we're all about at CF OnDemand. We're looking to help clients improve their profitability and increase business profits here. That's what the result is, and that's how we are measured by our clients. We overlay conventional accounting services, whether it's your internal accounting department, and with the help from your outside CPA who's on your tax return or maybe financial statements, we add a layer of financial analysis to give you the ability to do the things we talked about and really get the metrics you need and make suggestions on how to improve it. And what we found is that our owners evolve from business operators, which kind of pull you back into the business there, and evolve into business strategists. So they're involved in their business, but they're able to look forward and help drive the financial success of the company better than they had done before when they were merely acting as business operators. We have 2 upcoming webinars in the 2019 series. We have one on November 7th for the annual strategic planning budgets. As we get deeper into the 4th quarter, this is more and more what we're involved in, helping clients planning out their next year's budgets, strategic planning, opening up new locations, new product lines, acquisitions. All those things come into play here. So if you're of that mindset, this is usually the time of year you're thinking about it. That webinar should speak to you. And then lastly, we'll talk about financial cybersecurity. That is a hot topic. You can't look at the Wall Street Journal for a week period of time and not see some kind of news on that. So it's affecting small businesses. I'm going to get help from some of our cyber partners, cybersecurity partners, and maybe give you some insights that you'll find real helpful with that. So thank you for attending the webinar. Now a word from our sponsor, Sturdy Savings Bank, and we thank them for being this month's sponsor.
You know, I just found out that my bank is closing my branch.
Really? 'Cause my bank just changed owners. I don't know what to do.
If your bank is making some unexpected changes, it's time to make a banking choice that's yours.
If your bank is closing a branch or changing ownership, make Sturdy Savings Bank your choice. We've been serving Cape May County for more than 95 years.
It's your bank. Make it your choice.
Banking with a personal touch.
Sturdy Savings Bank.